Welcome to Yates Makes. In this video we're keeping it very simple. Gel plate and willow charcoal. So I'll be covering loads of approaches at the drawing stage with the charcoal to see how, kind of applying the charcoal in different ways works as a transfer and works when you then put it with a layer of wet paint or gel medium. Finishing up the video with just a bit of fun doing some blind drawing, continuous line stuff, mixing it with chalk pastels. Alright, let's get into the first example, which is all about kind of minimal smudging and really trying my best not to disturb the surface of the charcoal. So it's just gone on very raw. Any smudging that I do is kind of accidental, really, where I've just caught the drawing with the edge of my hand or the sleeve. Well, not that I've got sleeves on. I don't know what I'm talking about. So what I've chosen to draw is just like a little still life object, which is an old style kind of pump oil can. Beautiful object. I think this one's made of brass. And so I've got a range of tones, a few reflections to try and get, and any tonal, kind of heavy tonal areas I've tried to achieve with a kind of flat fill, or as I'm doing there, quite heavy hatching, and just to see how all of these different marks hold up when I go to transfer and when I then kind of apply my layer of wet paint to pull the print. So there's a completed drawing. You can see there's quite a range of marks, but a lot of very dense, heavy hatching. So there's no need to kind of apply anything to this drawing to transfer it. The tackiness, the stickiness of the gel plate I've done some experiments with chalk pastels. You can watch other videos. It should just lift enough of that charcoal off the surface of the paper to leave a good kind of impression or residue on the gel plate. So there you can see the drawing has transferred pretty well. What I really feared in working with charcoal on the gel plate was this stage, needing a wet layer of paint to now spread out and use as a kind of like adhesive, really, to stick to the paper and stick also to the charcoal sitting on the plate and lift it off. I thought that the rolling out process would really smudge that charcoal, but because I went in quite light and with a fairly thin layer and didn't work the paint too much on the surface of the plate, I actually was amazed at how kind of clean this image lifted. You can see there as a kind of like comparison, that's on the left is what was left of the drawing after I'd done the transfer, and on the right is the print. And you can see the massive benefit, just like with chalk pastel, is not only do you get a fairly clean print, but the process, the acrylic paint is completely sealing that charcoal. So whereas a traditional charcoal drawing is going to smudge over time, and you're probably going to lose some clarity or some density of tone, that shouldn't happen so much with this process. We'll see how they stand the test of time, so look, encouraged by that one, I went straight in and thought, well, how would it go with really heavily blocked tones and kind of just simple silhouette forms? So a very quick drawing I've done from a little sketch in one of my sketchbooks of some coppiced trees, and like I said before, this was really heavily blocked tone. Again, not smudged whatsoever. So my fear in smudging was, the process of smudging is going to grind that charcoal dust down into the paper and possibly make it harder to lift. So these were my first two experiments, is trying to avoid that. Anyway, again, going very light touch or as light as I can, with some white acrylic here, and again, this is going to be my adhesive really to pull that print off the plate. I probably worked the paint a little bit more on this one, but again, very light touch. It's quite hard to communicate on the camera, but I'm really was being a lot more gentle than I normally would when pulling a print, or applying my paint layer to pull a print. So again, this one came off pretty well. You'll see though that the white paint has got slightly stained in places with some of that charcoal dust, but not really. Came off pretty well. And some of that staining I actually quite like. That's just the joy of jelly plate printing, really, is that you get some of these more random marks and add a bit of texture and atmosphere. Alright, so having had two fairly successful prints, I thought I'd have a go. What happens when you smudge and really push some of that charcoal into the surface of the paper? How does that pick up? So as a reference here, I'm using one of Georges Seurat, who's a post-impressionist painter mainly. I don't really like his paintings, to be honest, but I love his kind of Conte pencil and pastel drawings. They're really beautiful. Now, the drawing, went okay. Charcoal actually didn't feel the most natural material to try and capture some of the kind of density of tone here. And, as you see when I do the transfer, it came off all right. Anyway, back to the drawing. It went onto the gel plate fairly well. I'm applying about the same amount of pressure as I did before. And when I lift it off, again, it's hard to see on the camera, but you'll see a fairly decent residue of the drawing there. The problems came when I kind of applied the paint. Now, I don't know, I probably should try this again, alright, to make it a really fair test, but I think I may have applied a bit too much paint, so then I had to disturb the surface more and try and remove some of that excess paint. But when the print pulled, when I lifted the image off, it just had this kind of weird creamy texture that, again, like I say, I should probably do, to make it totally fair, another experiment. But it came off all right. But when I get close up, as you'll see now, I just don't really like the texture too much. But it's okay. It actually pushed me on to my next experiment, which I think went probably the best of all of them. And this is me using charcoal far more how I normally would if I was just doing a charcoal drawing, and that is far more expressively, again in layers with blended and smudged areas, lifting out with a putty rubber as well, so getting some really clean areas, and with a little pencil rubber, just to try and clean some areas up, and really building layers, and having a range of marks, because that's why we all love charcoal, is that kind of the variety of marks you can build with it, whether it's quite scratchy linear marks or blended smudged areas. So if this worked, my thinking was then this was really a technique for me, because this is far more natural way to draw in charcoal for me. So there's the drawing, with a big range of marks, including some quite heavily lifted areas with a putty rubber and my pencil rubber. Again, this one went down fairly well, transferred nice and clearly. It's quite hard to pick up. It's got a kind of cloudy appearance when it's on the gel plate. You can't really tell at this stage what your actual print's going to look like, which really adds to the kind of excitement and mystery, I suppose. I was careful to add a bit less paint this time, and try and disturb the surface a bit less than my last print. I'm just using the back of the drawing to print on. Don't get confused by the fact my face is on the back of it. I just didn't want to waste paper when I was experimenting. But you can see that when you lift, when I lifted this one, I got a lot of clarity. I also got a really nice accidental line of white running down the sort of left-hand side of the face there. That was just a little bit of grungy paint left on the plate. But this one I was really pleased with. I quite like those big sweeps of kind of lighter tone where I've used the putty rubber. That all picked up quite well. So yeah, an expressive approach, really good. I was dead chuffed with that. Okay, finally, I just had a bit of fun. I wanted to try some linear work, so I did a bit of blind drawing. If you've never tried this, you just shut your eyes, you feel your face, and you just draw what you feel. And I built up various layers, you know. Once I'd kind of done the initial drawing, I smudged it back, then with my eyes open, as I'm doing here, just went back over, added a bit more density to those key lines in the drawing, and yeah, again, smudged back a little bit more, went back in with some more layers. I think I used some chalk pastels for my next layer. I'm putting a little reference point there. Just if you've never done this before, it's quite useful to have a point in between the eyes where you can feel when your eyes are shut. Back to that point, kind of fairly central to the face. So again, just adding more layers of charcoal, more layers of coloured pastel. You know, I've done other videos on coloured pastel, and I knew that would transfer. So just having a bit of fun, really, seeing how the charcoal lines would hold up against the pastels. This time transferring with gel medium, nice light, thin layer, just like with the paint. And you know, this was purely just to see how gel medium would work. And yeah, sure enough, all good. Got some quite interesting texture off the very sort of cheap paper I was using as well. That very sort of like kind of subtle grain there. Again, loads of fun, and you know, if you've never tried it, it's an exercise you should all try. Does wonders for your confidence in drawing. Okay, that's about me done. So I'm gonna crack on with some more charcoal drawing from probably my favourite art book. It's the one that's brought me most joy, which is a book of Van Gogh's drawings, and oh man, what a genius he was with ink and charcoal. So I think I'm just going to enjoy sketching from one of his like masterpiece drawings. And remember, the 15th of October, which is in 2 days, is your last chance to book the Gel Printers Summit. There's an affiliate link in the description box below, and I think my video's coming out tomorrow on the 14th, so you know, get your ticket for that. It's a great deal. You get loads of videos, 14 videos from different artists. I'm also going to put a link in to a channel I want you to check out. Now this lad, he's an amazing animator, and I just want him to have some encouragement. His channel is called Budget Movies. There's only a couple of videos on it, but if you check it out and subscribe, it might encourage him to make a few more, or at least upload a few more, so we can all enjoy his genius. This kid is like young, and he's already editing and producing videos that I just think are amazing. I'm hoping that, you know, he'll remember me when he's rich and famous. Alright, I've really enjoyed this one. Take it easy, and I'll see you soon for another video. Ta-ta.